Hey guys, wanted to take a minute to talk about a term that I've come to know as probability manipulation. Now, I'm sure that maybe the gambling industry has a definition for it, maybe the investment industry has a definition for it, and it actually probably both of those probably apply to what I'm talking about here, but I have my own definition. So, um, how do I describe it? uh, let's say you get a paycheck, right? And you don't want the complications of this, breaking down numbers and blah blah blah. And so you have this bill, and this bill, and you pay the bills as they come due, and you go grocery shopping, and you buy stuff as you need it, and maybe a little bit of what you want, and whatever's left over is left over, and maybe an emergency pops up, and then you have to pay more, and whatever's left over, if there's anything left over, is there. Maybe you're coming up short, and then one day you're inspired. You're tired of coming up short, or tired of being at your last dollar or whatever, and you're inspired to make a budget, and so you start looking at how much money you make, and uh, how much you could make if you worked a few extra hours down at the job, and you look at your bills and you see what is due when exactly, and how much you can get away with paying, and maybe you can pay some extra on this other bill and drive down the interest, and maybe you make a shopping list and don't shop so compulsively, and maybe next thing you know, you're managing your money better, and you're not coming up short. Um, but an absurd example of this, because I'm the type of person that I think too much. I overthink, I worry, and it got to the point where it affected my quality of life. And I went through some extreme measures to try to nip that in the bud, and it just didn't work. It made things a ton worse. And so, I knocked all that off, and now here I am having to cope with it again. And so, for the past several years now, I've employed this method, which maybe isn't new, but is new to me. Or well, it was new to me when I started doing it, and I realized what I was doing. So let me give you an absurd example just to get the point across. So you got this guy who's terrified of trains. He's terrified of being hit by a train, and long story short, he finds himself, not able to walk, not able to get out of bed even, owning a manufactured home that is parked lengthwise on the railroad tracks. Don't ask me why. I told you it was absurd. But the dude who parked it is gone, and immediately this guy is like, "Oh, what did I do? I am going to get hit by a train. I would, I got to find a way to not get hit by a train." And he starts scrambling to think about this, and he says, "Well, I guess I could move. I could have the guy move it to a less busy train track." Well, then he's rattling his brain again, because he's like, "No, that's not gonna take off my percentage. That's just gonna delay the 100% that I'm going to get hit by a train." And so he's like, "Okay, maybe I need to move off of the railroad tracks." Okay, so he moves off of the railroad tracks. He buys a plot of land or whatever, and immediately he removes like 85% chances that he's going to get hit by a train ever in his life. But still, there's a 15% chance. He worries about it a lot, and so he's like, "Well, what else could I do?" And I mean, the 85% is not like a recorded number somewhere, but it's something that he just kind of created to wrap his head around it. And then he was like, "Well, I could never take anybody to the railroad station." And so he knocks off like another 2.5% or whatever. And I could never cross the railroad tracks, and he knocks off another 2.5%. And he keeps on coming up with these ideas till he can't think of anymore. Next thing you know, he's at like a 2.5% chance in his life of ever getting hit by a train. And although it's not zero, because it's a very rare occasion, if you know anything about life, that you're going to come to an absolute 100% or an absolute 0%. And so, but it's very close to zero. And even though he still kind of, worries about it and wonders about it sometimes, he can kind of rest easy that he's not going to get hit by a train. But, he makes sure to have a backup plan because of the fact that it is not 0%. And so he says, okay, yeah, I'll get acquainted with the local hospital. I'll make sure that their trauma team's up to par. I'll get some insurance and disability insurance and stuff like that. And this is kind of where I'm getting at with what I'm trying to explain to you is that, life, if you just let it happen to you, well, then you let life control your circumstances. Or at least that's how it was for me. Maybe you are one lucky person, I don't know. But for me, if I actively look at my situations and I try to assign numbers to them, again, there's nothing recorded for this type of stuff. But if you just kind of make some common sense numbers out of your head, you can kind of wrap your head around it and get an idea of where you're at with it. And you consider your situation and what can be done and what percentages is either going to push you towards success or away from failure. You know what I mean? And once you're completed with your analysis of any of the given situations, you can maybe think of a backup plan just in case. I always like to have a backup plan, and that way I can double rest easy instead of having to worry about it all the time. I'm an anxious person. I want to control everything, and I got to realize at some point it is out of my control. And once it's out of my control, what is the point of worrying about it? What is the point of letting it affect my life in a negative manner? There is no point to me. And so, if you're anything like me, then maybe this kind of stuff can help. And if not, well, just thought I'd share it anyways. So take it easy.